How did I lose my self-value? This video is a part of the Love and Life Skills series for healing the relationship with yourself and others. Compiled and presented by Helen Bair. Do you try to look good on the outside, but feel like you're all tied up in knots on the inside? Do you wear many masks because you're afraid to let others know who you really are? Do you turn to relationships for external validation, to substances or other addictions to numb the pain? Are you grandiose and superficially charming, trying to build a false sense of self-importance? Are you a people pleaser and let others take advantage of you? Do you suffer with depression, anxiety, low self-esteem, and other painful emotions? Are you attracted to unsafe people? Or are you one of those unsafe people? Would you like to trade that hole in your soul for a whole soul? Hi, I'm Helen Bair. I'm here to tell you that there is an amazing you inside of you, a you worth fighting for, loving, and taking care of. My goal of this Love and Life Skills series is to help you discover that for yourself. It took a stress-caused health problem back in the 1980s to jolt me to the awareness of how I had never valued myself. The way I tried to make up for that was by being perfect and a people pleaser. It was my job to take care of everyone but me. I ignored my exhaustion, depression, and anxiety, which were trying to tell me to slow down and say no, to stop being so critical of myself. But I only listened to those messages that to be valuable is to never think of myself and only be there for others. After years of living under that kind of pressure, my adrenal glands gave out and my body collapsed. I could do nothing but lay on my back and stare at the ceiling for weeks. I was diagnosed with depression and dependent personality disorder. In other words, I was externally centered. Only if everyone liked and approved of me could I be worth something. I eventually found the medical intervention I needed for my adrenals, but it took years to learn the skills to take care of myself in proportion to how I was trying to take care of everyone else. My issues are different than yours, but the lessons that saved my life can help you as well in whatever your issues are. I learned to stop looking for external validation to give me the love and approval that I needed. I learned that if anybody loves me, to consider it a bonus, not to depend on that love for my survival. And here's the irony. When you learn to love yourself in healthy ways, that is when you can truly love others. So you see, if I'm doing something for you so you will love and approve of me, I'm not really loving you, am I? I'm just giving to get something back. It's impossible to give something to someone that you don't already have. Here's an example. My sweet mother used to tell me that I was wonderful, but then she would tell me that she was worthless. Which of those two messages do you think I picked up on? Yeah, the worthless one. So even if her intentions were good, how could she give me something she didn't have? So the love and life skills that I learned from Codependence Anonymous, personal therapy, and my education in psychology helped me to learn how to love myself so I can pass on real love to others in a healthy, mature way. In these love and life skills videos, you will learn ways to free yourself from unhealthy dependencies on external people and things to fix what's wrong or fill what's missing inside. People and things come and go. Even those you love the most are only in your life temporarily. Placing your dependencies on anything or anyone that cannot sustain you for a lifetime leaves you vulnerable. So in the Love and Life Skills series, You will learn how to place your dependency needs on the only two relationships that can sustain you for a lifetime. And those are the relationship you have with yourself and the relationship that you have with God. So for now, in this video, we're just going to talk about how to begin healing the relationship that you have with yourself. An externally centered person tends to be more of a human doing than a human being, just enjoying the experience of being who you are. Conventional wisdom suggests that recovery is about becoming selfish. Wrong. Selfishness is an extreme, and you want to avoid extremes. Recovery is about a healthy balance between loving God, loving yourself, and loving others as you love yourself. That is balanced living. This is what you want to avoid. Extreme takers, extreme givers, which is what I was. The balance, or the middle of the road, is give and take in balance with each other. Then we have extreme irresponsible versus overly responsible, and the middle ground we're looking for, which is just being responsible. No extremes on either side. Then there's the person who feels worthless and its ugly cousin on the other side, which is grandiose, meaning that a person tries to compensate for feeling worthless by thinking they're better than everyone else. The healthy middle of the road is just to realize that we all have worth and value because we're all God's kids, and God don't make no junk. Then there's allowing others to control you, and its opposite, the need to control others. The balance is control yourself and let others control themselves. And of course, the exceptions are the very young, the very old, or the helpless, and then those rules change. One has to find balance between what people need from you and what you need for yourself. A severe extreme is when people become abusers and take advantage of others to fill their deficits. The other extreme are the victims of those abusers who tolerate abuse and try to please their abusers for approval. But either of those extremes gives up their self-respect, their peace, and the true self when attempting to fix what's wrong or fill what's missing with external people or things. Here's some examples of that. Carrie tolerates her son's stepfather, punishing him harshly because she's afraid of what people will think if she goes through another divorce. Roger hates practicing law, but became a lawyer because of outside pressures and expectations. Jen can't say no. She takes on more than she can handle. She is depressed, overwhelmed, and suffers with stress-related health problems. Mark feels bad about hurting his wife, but soothes his guilty conscience by blaming her for not complying to his every demand. As Jana is waiting for her divorce hearing, she reflects that 10 years earlier, she knew she shouldn't marry Bob, but the invitations were out, the caterer paid for, and Bob got angry every time she suggested that she didn't feel good about marrying him. 2 children and years of abuse later, Jana realizes she could have saved herself and her children much heartache if she would have just listened to her internal warnings. But she was more concerned about what people would think of her and about appeasing Bob's anger than she was of listening to her own internal warnings. In each case, the person depended on others to determine something very important about their own lives. Recovery is learning to trust yourself, your intuitions, thinking, feelings, and then make decisions on what is real and true for you. It's okay to get counsel from outside of you, but ultimately you make those decisions for yourself because you're the one that has to live with it. Healthy relationships support all parties in doing the same for themselves. Here's some examples of externally centered people. Can't find love and approval inside, look for validation on the outside. People pleasers, rescuers, fear-based, shame-based, self-critical, perfectionists, rigid, less than, not good enough. And this is just a few examples. Look for a much longer list in the supplemental material below this video. Please take note of which ones apply to you, and that will establish your recovery goals. What makes a person externally centered? Well, here's your answer. Whether you like it or not, it's abuse. And that includes accepted but abusive patterns passed down from generation to generation in family systems and cultures. Abuse comes in many forms and extremes. Sometimes it's hard to detect, but it can still carry a devastating blow to your self-esteem. Unless you can identify what abuse is and how it affects you or how it has affected you, you may be abusing others without knowing it, tolerating abuse, or even passing those abusive patterns on to future generations. What is abuse? According to Pia Mellody, who is one of the founders of the codependency movement, abuse is anything less than nurturing, which means that abuse is on a large continuum, from something as simple as cut-down humor to the extreme of torture and murder. Some common cultural practices, such as spanking a child, may not even seem like abuse because the intention is discipline. But if this statement is correct, then it is still abuse. And abuse, whether intentional or not, causes shame, which says there is something wrong with me. And shame causes the loss of the true self, which creates the need to hide who you are. Abuse has many faces and extremes: aggressive or passive abuse, entitlement or deprivation, rigid punitive religion or no spiritual guidance, harsh punishment or no consequences for bad behavior, and family secrets or no confidences. Those are just a few examples. Abuse causes the disintegration of one's own value and can be experienced in every area of life. Here's the most common abuse that we're aware of: physical abuse, and that's anything that inflicts pain or injury on the body. But then there's covert physical abuse, which is a little harder to detect, which means the body is deprived of what it needs, such as proper nutrition or sanitation. Sex abuse, which is forcing sex against one's will. But what about covert sex abuse, which seems innocent, but it's still abuse? And then there's public abuse and humiliation. Family abuse has a great impact on children. Some family abuse is blatant and obviously wrong. Others comes from well-meaning parents who may just have poor parenting skills or are not equipped to handle the challenges of marriage and family. Emotional abuse. Anything that hurts the emotions, such as criticism, belittling, blame, and things like that. But what about covert emotional abuse? Neglect, rejection, empty promises, cold shoulder, or just simply failing to acknowledge a child's feelings as legitimate. Self-abuse may be the most destructive of all, because you are with yourself 24/7, and the self-condemnation never ends. Unfortunately, there's more ways to be abused than to be loved, and this is only the beginning of all the different ways in which one can be abused. There are far too many to list on this video, so look for a more comprehensive list in the supplementary material below. But keep in mind that even that list, as long as it is, and you'll see what I mean when you look at it, is still incomplete. Elizabeth Brown states, "Abuse is disintegration in progress. Like a disease, abuse infects the victim and spreads out to affect others. Victims of abuse grow to believe that abuse is an acceptable, normal interchange between people. End quote. Here's another one from Elizabeth. Broken bones heal more easily than a spirit that has been wounded by abusive words or actions. The will becomes disabled, the person becomes blind to options. A deep, profound, chronic depression sets in. And that's by James Bradshaw. Unless you heal and turn from the abusive patterns of your past, you may repeat them in your life in one extreme or the other. By blaming yourself, it must be my fault, and becoming the victim, or trying to regain the power you lost from earlier abuse by becoming the abuser. The goal of the abuser is to deflate others in order to be more powerful, to force one's will and get one's way, no matter who gets hurt. Offenders were probably once victims, but identified with their abuser and tried to gain power over others who seemed to be weaker. A good example of this is the bully. Shame caused by abuse blocks self-value. Shame is a sickness of the soul. It is a wound felt from the inside, dividing us both from ourselves and from one another. Abuse distorts our perception of who we are. So how did I lose my own self-value? Probably a lifetime of collected abuse of one type or another. James Bradshaw, in his book, On the Family, writes, and I quote, "Once a child's inner self is flawed by shame, the experience of self is painful. To compensate, the child develops a false self, creating the need to wear a mask or play an acceptable role so others will see you in good favor. After years of acting, performing, and pretending, the child loses contact with the true self. That true self is numbed out. The false self cover-up makes it impossible to develop self-esteem." Once again, James Bradshaw, On the Family. Victims and offenders both suffer from the same thing, a deep sense of shame. Ironically, these two opposites are often drawn into relationships with each other. The victim, who perceives him or herself as powerless, is drawn to those who seem powerful and confident, all the things the victim is missing, while the abuser is drawn to the less powerful, who will not stand up for the self and can easily be controlled, manipulated, and dominated. This makes a sick and enmeshed relationship, both trying to get the other to change in order to feel better inside. Healing another person will not heal you. So is there help for the abused and the abuser? Yes, by all means. However, it is typically the abused that reach out for help. Abusers may prefer hiding their guilt or enjoying the power of the conqueror more than changing character defects. How do I create self-value? Well, that's the whole point of these Love and Life Skills videos. The first thing I would suggest you do is heal all of the abuse from your past. And the best way I know of to do that is with SRT, Subconscious Repairing Therapy. To learn about that, get on to findingthehealer.com and watch the introductory videos. That will tell you just about everything you need to know about that subject. SRT and the Love and Life Skill videos are designed to help you gain the self-value that you deserve. Abuse will always be a part of this world, but you don't have to be an abuser or a victim. You can resolve your shame issues with SRT and learn healthier ways to live with the Love and Life Skills series. You can protect yourself with boundaries and stop generational patterns from being passed down to the next generation, at least in your family. If you truly loved yourself, you could never hurt another. So join us for the rest of the videos in the Love and Life Skills series to find more life-changing information. This is Helen Bair saying bye for now.